So what we are doing today is we're going to be reviewing some super high roller hand histories. Now I had the video brought up on my end, but it somehow disappeared on me, but that's okay. I had a lot of the super high roller tournaments that have been being played at Aria that were available on PokerGo transcribed into this lovely bare bones format that you see here in front of you. This is often how I do best looking at hands. I don't really have time to go through and watch 4 or 5 hours of footage of a final table, or like 8 hours of play like what I think we have here. Instead, I have time to just watch sometimes. My mom says you are coming and blurry. Well, if it's blurry, it is what it is. We can't do anything about that. So yeah, anyway, I am trying to go through these hand histories because you can learn a lot by watching the best players play. And like I said, I don't have time to watch tons and tons of hours of footage, so I had someone transcribe a lot of these. I have, 10 or 15 of them at this point, and I've been going through them, but I figured I'm going to go through them anyway. Why not do it here with you? So if you have any questions as we go through these hands, let me know. What we see here is the link to the event. What we're looking at here is the U.S. Poker Open 50K main event day 2. So this is actually not a final table, which is very important. A lot of the final tables that they show are, well, final tables. Whereas this is a day 2 of a 3-day tournament. So there are 12 people remaining in this tournament, 2 tables, with 5 people getting paid. So they're really not that near the money. And so we're going to see somewhat normal poker. We have stack sizes listed where they are relevant. I definitely understand that stack sizes are listed or are relevant throughout, and I think they'll be updated as they become more relevant. But we can sort of figure out what's going on. We can deduce it. Payouts are irrelevant, like I said. The final table will be on a different document. So once we get through this document, we will be at the final table. Okay, so what we have here, this is the timestamp of the hand. There may be a hand or two. Actually, let me go ahead and pull this up on my end while we're waiting for people to trickle in, where we do not necessarily have the whole cards or something, or maybe I want to look at the chip stacks or something like this. Let me see. Give me just a second. I'm going to sign into PokerGo on my end, and I will have the feed on my side. I don't want to violate any of their content rights. I have no desire to steal from PokerGo, so we're not going to watch the video. All right, so anyway, here we go. 2 minutes, 30 seconds in if you want to follow along at home. Blinds are 3,500, 7,000 with a 7,000 ante. First things first, a lot of people want to act like this button ante or big blind ante or whatever impacts the game. It does not impact the game. The game is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is that when you're playing 5-handed with a 7,000 ante compared to 10-handed with a 7,000 ante, one-person antes, the blind is effectively twice the size if there are 5 people compared to 10 people. So you just have to realize the ante changes the structure a bit, right? Basically, it's cheaper to play an orbit if there are 10 people as opposed to 5, assuming they keep the ante the same, which I think most people have, or most tournaments have done. All right, here we have Tom Marchese, very good player. Raises to 16,000 in the hijack with pocket jacks. Hopefully you all can see this. If you cannot see this, let me think what I can do. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit. That's not going to work. Hopefully you all can see this. I'm trying to think if there's even a better way to do it, but maybe there's probably not. All right, Daniel Negreanu calls in the big blind with 7-5 offsuit. I definitely don't fault Daniel for doing this. One thing I have been actively trying to do is avoid playing difficult spots. Now, I have played with Marchese a decent amount, and he is certainly a loose, aggressive opener. He's not a tight player by any means. So I don't mind defending 7-5 offsuit, but hands that realize their equity quite poorly are going to be hands like Jack-2 offsuit and 10-4 offsuit. Basically, big card, little card, right? 7-5 offsuit is a hand that is kind of in that area. It's definitely not good, but it is a situation where I would not be so opposed to folding it, especially as the razor comes from early position. Notice both players have about, how many is this? About 55 big blinds, so pretty deep stacked. You really just want to avoid reverse implied odds scenarios, or scenarios where you can just almost never check call down, right? You want to be able to check call down somewhat confidently. Marchese is a little bit on the aggressive side, but at the end of the day, he's just like good, solid GTO player. So anyway, let's see what happens. Flop comes king, 10, 3, 2 diamonds. It goes check, check. A lot of people look at this and think, oh my God, why would Marchese check with pocket jacks? What if a diamond comes? Well, it's not such a big deal if a diamond comes because there's no guarantee Negreanu has exactly 2 diamonds, right? As we see here, he has 1 and is drawing pretty much dead. And also, if Marchese bets and gets called or raised, he's often not loving the scenario anymore. So this is a very good spot to check behind with your marginal made hands. So what are your marginal made hands? Hands like bad kings, hands like tens, and hands like pocket jacks, right? Pocket jacks doesn't need to bet for quote-unquote protection because it's only worried about a queen or an ace peeling off on the turn, right? Whereas a hand like pocket fours, you may want to bet because if you bet pocket fours, you're going to make your opponent fold out stuff like, well, 7-5, right? If you make your opponent fold out 7-5, that's good. And also pocket fours can't really withstand much pressure if it goes check, check on the flop and your opponent bets the turn. So this is definitely a good play by Tom. And now Negreanu has the opportunity to bluff. All right, turns a 2 of diamonds. This here implies that Negreanu checks. A lot of people say, oh, what did Negreanu do? It's not listed. If it's not listed and the person's out of position, it means that they check. That's how basically everyone writes hand histories. You don't have to say what happens if the person checks. All right, so Negreanu checked, and now Marchese bet 30K into 42K, which I was a little bit surprised at. I've already been through these a little bit. I have notes on the side. I would have typically bet a little bit smaller in this spot, but I definitely understand the purpose of betting big because whatever hands Negreanu has at this point have some equity, right? Like notice here, even this 7-5 with the 5 of diamonds has 20% equity or so. And if you can deny your opponent that 20% equity, you might as well. So he does bet a little bit big. I think that's good, and he moves on to the next hand. So, very inconsequential this hand looks like, but I'm already maybe picking up a little something here, that whenever the turn is a diamond like this, you should be betting for value. And also you should be betting for protection, because you do need to protect against lots of stuff. If the turn was not a diamond, I imagine Tom would have bet as well, but then he's betting mostly for value, because he would likely expect Negreanu to bet the turn with some kings. This does open Marchese up to getting check raised, which would be a bit of a disaster. And I don't know how he would respond. I imagine he would just fold. But you got to be careful if you're folding out stuff like jacks when the flop checks through. Because if your opponent knows you're mostly checking through the flop with marginal made hands, as you should, if you bet the turn and get raised, you have to make sure you're defending with an appropriate amount of those. And that's why I said you should consider checking back with some kings on the flop so that you can bet them on the turn and still call a raise. That is definitely a spot where you would think Negreanu would have more flushes than Marchese, though, because Negreanu is not going to lead with a flush draw. And he certainly could check the turn with the diamond. So I think this is a good spot. Bruce says, text only, no cards? This is how I review hand histories. This is how everyone sends me hand histories. We're not here for the frills. We're here for the content. And the cards are listed. Here they are. Jack of heart, jack of clubs, 7 of clubs, 5 of diamonds. You will get used to this format very quickly if you use it. It works great. I list how I use it at jonathanlittlepoker.com/notes. And you'll never miss the action and you'll know everything that happens. We don't need an image here that says jack of hearts, jack of clubs. All right. Would it be better to bet small on the turn? Well, I don't think so. I think the bigger bet size is good because it denies equity. Imagine he bets small on the turn. Like let's say he bets 15K. Well, now Negreanu's almost getting the right price with any like overcard to a jack plus a diamond. So I think it's probably fine. One thing you'll also find is that as you bet bigger on the turn, you're less likely to get raised, whereas if you bet smaller, you're going to be more likely to get raised, just in general. So if anyone knows of a free application that I can take this hand history and put it through, and it will somehow visualize this, I would be willing to do it. But I don't know of any application that's going to do that. I guess I could search all hands and put a club and a heart there or something, but come on. We're all adults here. It's not always pretty. All right. Next hand. I could have watched 7 hands by now. All right, next hand. 7K big blind again. Smith. Presumably this is Dan Smith. I'm actually going to watch the video for just a second and see if I see Dan Smith. I do see Dan Smith. Okay, Dan Smith's a good, loose, aggressive kid. He raises to 16K and the cutoff when 9-7 suited, which is perfectly fine. Marchese calls big blind with king-jack offsuit, which I also think is fine. Then it goes check. Smith bets 25K and a 42K, and Marchese folds, which is perfectly fine, perfectly standard. This hand, I probably would have bet a little bit bigger on the flop. Maybe I wouldn't have. So this is a spot where if stacks were deeper, like if both players had 400K, I think Smith could bet something like 35K on this flop. This board of 8-6-4 should not hit Smith, the initial raiser, too well. When that's the case, you have a range disadvantage most of the time, or it's like 50-50. And in that scenario, you should be doing a decent amount of checking. And when you are betting, you typically want to bet on the bigger side. That's because you're betting with your good draws and your good made hands. So the reason not to bet 35K in this spot, though, is that if you bet 35K, now Marchese could just make a big all-in. And you certainly don't want to face an all-in in this scenario when you have 9-7 of spades, right? You would much prefer to bet 25K, have him raise to 70, and then you can jam all in. Now, you have fold equity, right? When you have a draw, you always want to make sure you have the option to be the last person to put in the raise. So given Smith's stack size, I think this is a very good bet. If he had more chips, though, I would have preferred a slightly bigger bet. This is day 2. Maybe I should write this somewhere. Let's see. Sources. Maybe we can just edit this. What was this thing called? This is called U.S.Poker Open. U.S.Poker Open main day 2. There we go. Right here for everyone to see it. Good. Now there will be no confusion for anyone else. Okay. So good play there by Smith. And Marchese, you have to ask, should he ever make a play here? One thing I think you're going to learn very quickly from watching these super high roller hand histories is that most of these players are only playing reasonable hands. A lot of people always ask me in my weekly poker hand podcast, why don't you show us the bad hands that you play? Well, because you don't play bad hands. The only time you're playing bad hands are when you're both in late position. So that's the main time you see it happen. Let's see, is it copyright to not use the video? I don't know, but I don't feel like stealing people's content. There are a lot of people in the poker world who are very happy to be criminals. I try to not be a criminal, though. I've learned that it's better to not steal from people than it is to steal from people, or even do anything remotely close to stealing from people. So we're going to go through this text document, because that is what responsible humans do. All right, here you have Smith raising with pocket twos and a hijack to 16K. Marchese 3-bets the small blind with ace-king of spades. Notice here, big sizing, right? It went 16 to 60. And Smith folds pocket twos. He does not elect the jam. And I think that is just going to be good poker. Not a whole lot to say about that hand. A lot of amateur players may make it smaller from the small blind. They may make it like 40K or 35K. And that is usually a pretty big mistake. Because if you do make it small, now you're giving the initial raiser a great price to call, right? You don't really want them to call. You'd rather them to 3-bet or fold, especially if you know that your strategy in this spot is to primarily 3-bet very polarized, right? Like if you're 3-betting ace-9 offsuit or ace-10 offsuit and ace-king suited, you would rather your opponent shove as opposed to call because you don't really want them, you don't have to play out of position is what it amounts to. So if you can put them into a shove or fold game, then you can just call off very, very well, right? So I like this play. And notice Smith does not jam the pocket twos. maybe he would jam if he was a little bit shorter. But even then, I don't think he's ever really jamming here. When you raise pocket twos and get 3-bet, just fold. I don't actually think folding this would pre-flop, just open folding it would be that bad. If you have loose aggressive players yet to act, then I think it's perfectly fine to do that, to just fold. But I would have opened it every time as well. All right. Negreanu raises 16K. King 10 offsuit. We don't have a position. See if I can find it real quick. Negreanu is in the cutoff here. All right. Negreanu. Ben Tollerine calls Jack 9 of hearts. All right. This is a spot where in the past I would almost always 3-bet. But if you play around with this program called Monker Solver, MonkerSolver, it's like Pio Solver, but for multi-way situations, you'll see that it actually does not mind flat calling in these spots, which is something that I was not doing. And if you look at a lot of people, they're also not doing. We have Dan Smith in the big blind, a very good loose aggressive player, right? But Tollerine's still just calling. I imagine Tollerine has probably studied poker more than almost everyone. He's, for those who are unfamiliar, just like super high stakes cash game player, one of the biggest winners ever in today's games, which is tough to do. So I'm going to presume that he knows right. This is a tournament, not a cash game though. So maybe he has slightly less experience playing shallower stack than a lot of these players, but something tells me that he is doing all the math away from the table. And from the math I've done away from the table, I've seen that flatting in these spots with stuff like Jack 9 of hearts is often going to be better than 3-betting it, because you really do get to realize your equity well, even from out of position with these types of hands, and it keeps the pot small, which is fine, right? I mean, I understand you want to make stack to pot ratio shallower as your when you're out of position, because that takes away the post-flop advantage for the in-position player. But at the same time, Jack 9 of hearts is one of these hands that flops well. Basically, all the big suited hands, you can justify calling in pretty much every spot. All right, flop comes 10, 6, 5. Notice that Dan Smith folded pre-flop. Let's see if I can find what he folded. I don't know if they'll show me that. I don't think they're going to show it to me. Give me just 1 second. Wish there was a way to fast forward 2 seconds. It doesn't really matter. I'm sure he folded some garbage. Okay. It goes check, check on the flop. Notice, remember I just mentioned that when you are checking behind, you want to make sure you have some top pairs in your checking range. I think this King 10 is definitely a hand that is good enough to bet, right? This is also quite a dry board. And if you think about Tollerine's calling range, remember what I just said, it should be mostly big card hands or good suited connectors. Now, big card hands and good suited connectors are either going to have, in this scenario, a 10 or some sort of a draw. Negreanu probably doesn't want to get it all in, but at the same time, I definitely think he should be betting for value here, just because his hand's so good. There's sort of a line where your hand is so good and you do want to be betting with some of your good hands that you do want to bet. The benefit of checking is that your opponent's going to bluff some portion of the time, which is great because you're just always calling. So if he thinks, for example, that Tollerine is going to bet a lot of turns if the flop goes check, check, then I think checking is fine. But I would be betting this hand almost all the time. Does go check, check, though. Tollerine turns the jack and now goes for value. This is a spot where I think you can actually bet quite big in general. He does go 66% pot, which is fine. He may even want to go bigger. The times you want to go bigger, though, are when the flop checks through and then the turn is an undercard. When it's an overcard, it's important to realize that Negreanu's check behind on the flop range could easily be stuff like queen jack or king jack or ace jack, and Tollerine loses to all those hands. So he doesn't want to bet so big to where he's only getting called in those spots. So he does bet. Negreanu does just call as expected. River's a 10, another one, so Negreanu has trips. Tollerine now bets 65K. This is a somewhat thin bet. This is another spot where it depends a lot on What do we, like, how do we expect Negreanu to play? Notice that the flush draw missed on the flop, right? There were 2 spades available. Also, 8-7 was available. And also Negreanu could just have a lot of ace highs here. So if Negreanu has ace high, is he ever going to call a river bet? I would assume he's not going to call a river bet. He's always going to call with a jack, and he would definitely call with all of his jacks on the turn, I would assume. So I think you're going to have a hard time getting called by too many worse hands besides exactly 9s, 8s, and 7s. And, you know, those hands exist. They exist in the range for sure. I think you may want to check call against Negreanu, though. It's tough, though. Sometimes this plays he'll call with ace high. Maybe he'll call with ace high. I mean, that's the thing. If you think he's going to call with ace high here, then definitely value bet. But I don't think ace high makes such a good call in this spot because it's so easy for Talleyrand to have a jack or a 10. And the main bluffs you're going to be catching here are like king, queen. So I'm not so sure that makes sense. Dwilly just subscribed. Thank you very much. Welcome. We're going to be doing a lot of streaming over the next month or so, most likely, so hopefully it'll pay off. Do you ever think he would have been better to bet small on the river, like third pot? I do think a smaller... Okay, so it's important to realize that when the draws miss, very often you want to be betting big with your whole range, whatever you're betting. The hands you do want to bet small are going to be marginal made hands, if you are going to have a bet small range. And this falls in the bet small range, right? So the real question is, do we want to have a bet small range? I don't have a ton of experience in these spots splitting up my range into lots of sizes. I imagine Talleyrand has done the work away from the table and knows that in this spot, he can bet small with some hands like jacks and also some of his draws. So as long as he's balanced, this is definitely a hand that he's going to want to bet small with because you're trying to get called by a lot of garbage. However, he probably just wants to have one bet size. Or maybe this is the small bet size and then a giant bet size later. So who knows? Yeah, anyway. Once Negreanu raises, though, it becomes a really I can't say. I'm trying to say dicey and nasty at the same time. It becomes a really crappy spot. How about that? Where this is a tough spot. I mean, mainly because all the draws missed. The thing you would have to assume, though, is that Negreanu would bet all of his draws on the flop, or at least the majority of them, besides ace-high flush draws. And he's not going to need to raise ace-high flush draws on the river. So it makes logical sense that he shouldn't have a ton of bluffs here. If he does have a bluff, I think it'd be king-queen, mostly. And, you know, there's 16 combinations of king-queen. Maybe 15 if you don't count the spade. The spades. So, I don't know. He doesn't block king-queen at all. Maybe it's supposed to be a call. I don't know. The thing is that Talleyrand could very easily have all the jacks. Or I'm sorry, all the 10s. And he could definitely have all the better jacks too. So he probably has many more better hands in his range to call. This is one of these spots, though, where I'm not exactly sure if the most important factor here is having blockers to Negreanu's obvious bluffs or just having the top of your range. I think given Talleyrand just does have a lot of really good hands here, like 10s. Like he could very easily have 10s. He could also maybe have sets if he decides to flat those. He could also have ace-jack, which is just a better jack, and maybe Negreanu raises slightly worse for some reason. I wouldn't expect that, but maybe that happens. So this is probably just going to be a fold. How does Negreanu determine the bluffs to value combinations here? All right, you want to look at the pot odds your opponent's getting. Let's get out a calculator. Calculators are useful. In this scenario, Negreanu raises 100K into a pot that's going to be 165 plus 165, so that is 315, plus another 106, so that is 420, right? I think it's 420. So what's 100 divided by 420? Well, come on, calculator, cooperate. 100 divided by 420 equals 24%. This means Negreanu, if he wants to be balanced, needs to have 24% bluffs in his range. Okay? Let's say he has 16 king-queen combinations. Let's say 15, because he probably bets king-queen of spades on the flop. All right, so 15 king-queen combinations. That means he can have 15 divided by 0.24 equals, he can have 62 value hands if he's only bluffing with king queen. 62 is a lot. Let's assume he checks king 10. You guys can't see my fingers. King 10, king 9. I'm sorry, king 10, queen 10, jack 10, 10, 9. Okay, how many of those are there each? Well, there's 8 of those each, right? 2 10s remaining and 4 of the kicker. Maybe not jack 10, sorry, because there's less of those. Also, he may not open stuff like 10 9 offsuit, right? So, for king 10, notice he's opening offsuit, so we can assume 8 of these. Let's assume 8 queen 10s. Jack 10's a nut hand. The nuts too, but that's fine. So he has 3 times 2 of those, so 6 of those. So that's 16, 20, 22. And maybe he has 10 9. Let's give him all the 10 9s, although I think that'd be a hair loose. So that's 30. That's 30 combinations right there, okay? Remember, we're trying to get to 62 to justify bluffing every king queen, which is going to be hard, like I told you. You can have pocket jacks. That's a hand that makes sense. There are 3 of those, so that's 23. Did I say 23 or 30? Maybe I was at 30. I think I was at 30, so that's 33. Maybe he slow plays 6s and 5s. Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. So that's, call it 40. As you see, it's hard to come up with 62 combinations of hands you want to raise here. So what that means is that using this small raise size, Negreanu cannot bluff very often. Well, 24% of the time. So, this is a scenario where it's a pretty nasty spot. U.S.Poker says only one combination of jacks. Well, Negreanu does not know Ben Tolerine's hand. He has to assume that you don't know your opponent's cards whenever you're deciding what to do in these spots. You don't discount the fact that you know your opponent's hand because you don't know your opponent's hand. You only discount the cards that... You want to look at the total number of combinations that could be in your range that you would be playing in this manner, right? So the fact that he holds king 10 doesn't mean that there are fewer king 10 combinations available now, right? It doesn't mean that we know there's an additional king dead, right? So you don't count the cards in your hand that you know. Can you use this formula on the flop and the turn? I discussed this extensively at pokercoaching.com. On the flop, you want to have about 2/3 bluffs to 1/3 value bets, assuming your bluffs have some equity. On the turn, you want to be about 50-50. On the river, you want to be about 2-1, assuming you're using somewhat big bets. As you're using smaller bets, you have to have fewer bluffs. And again, if you have not already, I assume all of you are familiar with me. You go sign up to pokercoaching.com and get your free week trial and go through all the past homework questions and quizzes, and you'll be very familiar with these concepts. It won't be hard for you at that point. So if you're trying to be balanced on the river, it's just a pure math problem if you're polarized. And here, Negreanu is certainly going to be polarized. He's going to have either a 10 or better or nothing. So he has to be very careful that he does not bluff too often in this spot. So like I just showed you there, if he's bluffing every king-queen, that's going to be too often. So can't bluff every king-queen. So that means if he has some sort of busted spade draw, he can't bluff it. Or if he has a hand like queen 9, he can't bluff it. Right? These are all hands that he may want to bluff, but he doesn't have enough nut hands to use this raise size. So if he is going to raise in this spot and he wants to bluff more often, I would recommend using a bigger raise size. However, one problem he's going to run into is that stacks are going to be getting shallow, right? If he goes all in, now he may get to the point of raising so big to where Tolerine's almost always going to call when he's beat. So now he has to be raising a smaller range for value all in. Because like say he had ace-jack, right? He wouldn't want to raise ace-jack for value all in because then he's only going to get called when he's beat. Someone mentioned that he could raise aces, kings, and queens if he felt like it on the river, but I do not think that would be a good raise because it's so easy for Tolerine to have a 10. It's very important that when you're value raising the river in a polarized manner, you want to be primarily raising with hands that you know are good even when you get called, and also hands that you know are going to lose, like definitively lose every time you get called. You don't want to be raising hands like queens because you can raise those and just very easily be beat. if you are going to be raising very thin for value, you do often want to use a small raise size because you're trying to get called by garbage then. Yeah, so can't Negreanu just make his bet size bigger? That's what I'm saying, is that the fact that he doesn't have, like even, like say he has 10-9 on the river, I don't know if he needs to be jamming 10-9 all in, because then he's going to still get called when he's beat, right? And he is going to be beat some portion of the time. He has to raise a tighter range for value, maybe ace-jack and better. I'm sorry, ace-10 and better. Maybe king-10 and better. You think it's better to use ace-5 or ace-6 for a raise, because those hands are not good enough to call. I would highly disagree with that. And the reason I would highly disagree with that is because those hands are good enough to call, first off, because all the draws missed. And also, what hands do you want to block? Well, you would like to block your opponent's calling range, right? You're trying to block your opponent's calling range. You're not trying to block straight draws. You want your opponent to have a straight draw. That's what makes that such a good calling hand. When you have a king and a queen in your hand, that makes it less likely that Talleyrand has king-queen, which means he's more likely to have a marginal made hand, right? Also, you block the obvious value betting jacks on the river, which is kind of nice, which means he's more likely to have a weaker hand there, or at least a very polarized hand. Not necessarily very polarized, but he's not going to have the value hands that can bet the river and then call a raise somewhat easily. So I definitely do not think ace-6 or ace-5 are good raises in a spot. Why is ace-5 used excessively in preflop raising wars? Well, ace-5 suited is because it often has a lot of equity even when you get it all in. And that's pretty much it. You want to have some bluffs. Typically, you want to use your aces that are not good enough to call when you are electing to 4-bet or 5-bet or whatever. And ace-5 is almost never good enough to call. It makes a straight, so it's a little bit better than ace-6. Notice when your opponent has a pair and they're getting it in, it's going to be something like 10s and better. So the fact that you have a 9 or an 8 or a 7 with ace-8 suited doesn't really matter. Those have the exact same equity as... my Siri is going off over here. Those have the exact same equity, or very near the same equity. So you'd rather have one that makes it straight. Okay, good. So I wrote in my notes here, this is a tough spot when all the draws miss, but I guess Negreanu bets most draws and mostly checks the marginal made hands on the flop. Therefore, it's probably a fine spot to raise. Probably a fine spot to fold, the jack-9 I meant. So yeah, that's fun.